So today marks a new day for Nielsen. It is the perfect opportunity for experimentation right here on Money. Twitter is now going to be incorporated into the ever so important TV ratings. We all hang our hats on those day to day. The idea is that advertisers may be more inclined to spend the $66 billion that go towards commercials on shows with very active tweeters. Of course, since Twitter is my most favorite social media tool, you guys know that, I love the idea. But here to tell us if it's actually accurate or ripe for manipulation are the king of marketing, Bruce Turkel, and our own media magnate, Dennis Neal. Dennis, you tell me first, how does this work? I mean, how are they trying to extrapolate from Twitter what people are doing and relate it to television?
Right. Well, we actually had a Nielsen exec come on the noon show today, and I'm still a little fuzzy on exactly how it's working, because it's not as if they've taken from the same sample of the TV ratings people to then see the Twitter they're doing. Instead, they have a second sample where they're going and looking after Twitters. But one metric they've come up with so far, and they've been testing this with A&E, a couple of the big networks so far, is that for every tweet they see about a television show, they now know that, well, 50 other people see that tweet.
See that tweet, but aren't watching it on television. I mean,
well, that's the thing we don't know. Now, it turns out 90% of us now watch television sometimes with a second screen in hand. 30 million of us, 90%. Some surveys say 55%. Some surveys say 90%. Because, you know, we never have our cell phone out of our hand, right? And so Twitter's kind of tapping into that.
Sad.
But the one thing we don't know is that, are we sure that just because people tweet about a show that more people are likely to buy products advertised on that show?
That's true.
Big
like,
question.
That's an extra level of complication, Bruce. I mean, we have some folks that I love, let's put up their names real quick, who tweet us while we're on the air about the segments that are on. These are some of our regular friends from Friday. Are we going to put it up? We left Ted Stickney off. He's fantastic, too. But I just want a shameless shout out to my followers out there who are commenting on the segments as we're doing them. So, Bruce, I would ask you, we know these folks are really watching because they comment on the product as it's going by, but what is it that you can really extrapolate from what people are saying on Twitter all the way through to the television advertiser?
What you just did, Melissa, is exactly what the shows or the production companies are going to do. They're going to look for the people who are active on Twitter, and they're going to be incentivizing them either with shout outs or who knows what to start tweeting about the programming. Now, what it will do, exactly what Dennis said, is it will build the number of people talking about the show.
Yeah.
What we have no verification that it's doing is what you said.
Yeah.
We don't know if it means A, people are watching, and more importantly, we don't know if B, they're buying the products that are being advertised.
I was talking to some market people about this a few days ago, as a matter of fact, and they believe that Twitter actually gives you an early hint. In the same way that credit default swaps will blow out ahead of a stock price's plunge in the actual stock, so do Twitter comments blow up before something happens. And they argue that you could have known that JCPenney was headed for problems, that BlackBerry was headed for problems by gauging sentiment on Twitter and looking at the buzz and how it turns down.
I guess, but Bruce, I mean, one of my favorite examples of all time, and you did this with us, I mean, there was the Sharknado phenomenon where it went crazy. Right. I mean, there were tweets like crazy. Everybody was really into it. It was phenomenal. Right, but they ended up having basically the same number of viewers, according to Nielsen, that they normally did for that type of show at that hour. It wasn't a big blowout. And they thought from Twitter that, oh my gosh, this rating is going to be through the roof because there were so many people on Twitter talking about it. But then that's not what showed up on Nielsen the next day. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, maybe this will become the Sharknado effect. You know, what is good about all this is that you're crowdsourcing reaction. So, again, what you just said, you can tell what's going to happen ahead of time because you can see where the zeitgeist is. You can see what people are talking about. And, in fact, the Sharknado program, yeah, they didn't have more people watching, but maybe those people were more engaged. They were chatting about it. They were talking about it. They were talking about it.
Far more people watched a really bad program, guys.
Wait, but more, no, but they were all, I mean, in this time slot, they always had bad programs. Like, this was the signature of this night, it was cheesy, you know, pseudo horror movies. They had the same, basically the same number for a premiere of a new cheesy pseudo horror movie that they do normally. And we don't know that any of those people, so what they were talking about it online, they didn't buy any of the products associated with the show. Like,
you know what? I don't think you can track a whole lot. The fact is, I think Bruce makes a good point. More engaged means you're more engaged in watching the show, and you're probably more engaged in watching who's advertising on the show. The question is, does it mean you'll be more of a buyer of those products? I mean, you still have to have ads that appeal to the thing you want.
Okay. Bruce,
you're much more likely to because the conversation is going on amongst everybody, and all the people who you're tweeting with are now paying attention to what you're talking about. So I think, in fact, that buyership will go up because you'll see what's on people's minds.
Meanwhile, You know, this is sort of the second big link up, the second big win for Twitter that we're talking about in 2 different weeks. You know, we were talking about them partnering with the NFL. Yeah. It just seems like more and more evidence that they're pulling further and further ahead of Facebook and anyone else in the social media realm. Can anyone catch up to Twitter at this point? Bruce, what do you think?
You listen, nobody could have caught up to MySpace, and then Facebook cleaned their clocks. I think anybody can catch up, and I think they can do it awfully quickly. BlackBerry owned their segment. Android came along, BlackBerry's gone. So yes,
be careful also of the phrase catch up. I mean, Facebook is still the biggest one out there, right? I mean, It's over 1 billion people in that tent.
All right. Guys, thanks to both of you. Great insights.